Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, does he stand by his position that the government should not borrow in order to make contributions to the New Zealand Superannuation Fund? If so, will the government have to borrow to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy, new motorways that have no financial return, and for subsidies to greenhouse polluters?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I do stand by that position, and I would note to the member that the government is borrowing money to invest in a range of infrastructure, including modes of transport favoured by the Greens. We have a significant investment program in roads. We announced a major investment the day before yesterday in Kiwi Rail, and we've also been investing in cycleways around New Zealand, so that pretty much covers the field. Not skateboards. We haven't invested in skateboards.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At a time when the government is borrowing heavily, is it fiscally responsible to borrow further to pay for pet motorway projects such as Stephen Joyce's Holiday Highway north of Auckland, which the government's own figures show will lose the country money?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we haven't actually got to the motorway north of Auckland, but the government does stand by its extensive investment in roads. We do need to complete the Auckland motorway network. We need to deal with the bottlenecks and the traffic risks in the Auckland Taupo-Tauranga triangle, Auckland-Hamilton-Tauranga triangle, and deal with other bottlenecks around the country so that we can have efficient delivery of our export products to our ports so this country can actually earn more than it spends for a change.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At a time when the government is borrowing heavily, is it fiscally responsible to borrow further to pay for free allocation credits, otherwise known as subsidies, to greenhouse gas polluters?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government has got a pretty balanced fiscal strategy where we are borrowing money to absorb the shock effects of the global recession and the mismanagement of the previous government. That's going to help us through tougher times. At the same time, we're investing in the future and investing in infrastructure and skills in order to lift the growth performance of this economy.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Speaker, the question is about the greenhouse gas subsidies. I wonder if the Minister could address why that is a priority for his spending.
Order, I don't believe that was the only part of the only aspect of the member's question. There was more to it than that, and the Minister, as I recollect, correctly answered the first part of the question.
Order, Mr. Speaker. It was a one-legged question, so to speak, which was why is the government borrowing to pay for free allocation credits?
I'll allow the member to repeat his question, then Dr. Russel Norman can repeat the question without penalty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the time when the government is borrowing heavily, is it fiscally responsible to borrow further?
That was what I thought. The member made a statement at the start of the question, which is, you know, if a member makes a statement at the start of a question, the Minister is just as likely to pick up on that statement and respond to it. If the member wanted to ask a question, he could ask, why is the government borrowing for certain thing? And I would have backed him, but no. Sorry, next supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
Supplementary question. Is it fiscally responsible to borrow further to pay for free allocation credits, otherwise known as subsidies, to greenhouse gas polluters?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as is often the case with this government, we've got about the right pragmatic balance in the case of the greenhouse gas emissions, where we have obligations under the Kyoto Protocol. The government is picking up some of those obligations, and some of them will be spread through the economy through the emissions trading system. So the government's doing its bit, and the rest of the community will do its bit, and it's about the right balance. A better balance, in our view, than the previous government's emissions trading system, which would have imposed very significant costs on all New Zealand households and businesses.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it fiscally responsible to borrow further to pay for tax cuts for those at the top?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the member would have to wait and see how what's announced in the budget tomorrow with respect to that matter. We have said for some time that any tax package the government puts together will be broadly fiscally neutral. It can't be a lolly scramble because for every dollar the government gives out, it's got to take it in from somewhere else.
Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will he assist the opposition MPs to understand how borrowing for tax cuts is fiscally responsible by pushing Treasury to allow economic analysts from parliamentary services to attend the full media budget lock-up tomorrow?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, judging from the statements made by various opposition parties, I don't think we'll ever be able to persuade them that irresponsible borrowing is bad for New Zealand.
Question. Point of order, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek leave to table the photographs from the 2008 budget lock-up which show that even National Party blogger David Farrar was led into the full media lock-up.
Order. Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? Order. There is no objection, I take it. Question number 12, the Honourable Pete Hodson.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to